So I want you to take a look at this um, article that I've come across, and it's talking about a new center that was supposed to create change in Chicago. And I believe it is an Obama center. It was new, a newly built. So this article is out of NBC News by Sophia Sami Ali. And so it says, can't stay anymore. Residents near the new Obama Center fear being pushed out by gentrification. Now, haven't we heard this? It's in all of the cities that I've been hearing, all of the, metropolitan cities. We've been hearing about that. It's in LA, it's in Inglewood, LA County, it is in Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit. I believe it happened there, and New York. It seems like everywhere you look and you turn, there has been this great push to upgrade, which some of that seems good, but it's not so great for many people that can't afford when they move these buildings or these centers or these stadiums. And the best way to put it is, for example, here in LA County, I remember or recall when people were excited about the stadiums, the football stadiums being built, because there was a history where there were stadiums and they had, I believe, the Raiders and these teams. And nobody back in the 80s was really worried about gentrification because that wasn't really the thing. There might have been other issues going on, but it wasn't so much about gentrification. Now that seems to be the focus, the major focus in most of these metropolitan cities in these areas where primarily African American and Latin community live. So this article, it says Chicago less than 3 miles from where former President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama broke ground last week on their long-awaited presidential center on the south side of Chicago. So Tahiti Hammer lies awake at night thinking about the limited time that she and her family have left in the neighborhood where she lived her whole life. And so it goes on to say, following the announcement of the center in 2015, neighborhoods adjacent to the 19-acre planned site have seen skyrocketing rents and housing prices. And Hammer, 42 years of age, a single mother of 3 kids, is one of several facing displacement. So Hammer, a teacher at a local YMCA, said that she tried to buy a home for the last 2 years, but it's been out of reach in her neighborhood. So she found a house that she could afford 12 miles south. I do not want to leave, I want to stay, but I'm barely keeping my head above water now, she said. So Hammer's rent has gone up from 800 to 1,000. And so here in LA, a one-bedroom might cost you twice the highest end of rent that she's talking about. You might have to pay 2,000. So, or maybe even more. And some studios here in LA County can be a little over 2,000. So she said that her landlord has already told her that there's another $100 hike coming because the area is coming back. That is what I wanted to talk about. Is I noticed that in bringing it back to LA County and Inglewood and LA, south of LA, it's the exact same thing here in LA, in Boyle Heights, New York. I've heard that they're having the same thing like in Harlem's, places where most people were living like maybe all their lives, and they noticed that there was a rent increase. And there's this beautification going on. We have that going on even in downtown LA, when the Staples Center started, and now you have all these high rises that are being built. You can literally see cranes that are still building the high rises in downtown Los Angeles. So it's sad that the place where they live their whole life, I can't stay anymore, she said. And once I leave it, it will be impossible to ever come back to it. And it's the same story with so many people in this community. And so, despite the Obama Presidential Center being built for the benefit of historically underprivileged communities of color, housing experts say that without timely and robust housing protections, it may become the catalyst for displacement of that same community, pushing out residents it intended to help. So the location of the ambitious project was chosen to honor the former first couple's roots and boast a library, museum, and activity center costing more than $500 million. So the demand has already boomed the housing costs, increasing at the higher rates in these areas surrounding the proposed center than citywide since 2016, according to the 2019 study by the University of Illinois Chicago. So much of the existing community is low income, with many paying more than that they can afford for the monthly housing costs, the study reported, and the eviction rates are some of the highest in that city, of South Shore being the highest average of 1,800 a year, which is about 9% of the renters. And so this is the very much follows the script of how gentrification works, said Winifred Curran. It's a professor, or she is a professor of the geography and sustainable urban development at DePaul University. And so the Obama Center is kind of like a signal to developers to get real estate now for cheap. And so then the profit potential is huge. So that's what gentrification is. Unless you are very specifically do things to keep housing affordable to make property accessible to long-term residents, you're going to see displacement. And so I believe here this is the young lady with the children who she says that it really has impacted her and her family. And she's a teacher at a YMCA. And it's sad, she's been there all her life. And so it uproots a whole family who has been in that area for most of their life. So Tahiti Hammer and her children are in front of their home in the South Shore neighborhood of Chicago. And so this is them pictured here. And so it displaces a lot of people. So the battle between residents who live around the site and the city of Chicago has been ongoing for the last 6 years, but many say that they are still waiting for significant aid to come through. So Dixon Romeo, a lifelong South Shore resident and organizer with Obama Community Benefits Agreement Coalition, a resident-based group formed in 2016 to help fight displacement, said that the residents are not against Obama Center per se, but instead they're looking for help so that they can be around to enjoy the center. And so, how can we benefit from it if we're not there anymore? He said, this is the community that sent President Obama to Springfield. And so, this is the community that sent him to the Senate. And this is the same community that sent him to the White House. And we should be the community that gets to stay for the Presidential Center, which makes a lot of sense. So, after intense pushback from the coalition, the city passed the Woodlawn Housing Preservation Ordinance last year, which promises to help one neighborhood, which sits directly across from that site, which is 4.5 million in affordable housing programs, a requirement that at least 30% of the new apartments be made affordable to low-income households. and the provision that allows renters a right of first refusal if the landlord decides to sell the building, among other things. But Dixon, who's 27, said the residents still haven't seen any significant changes with the ordinance and that it falls short by not including South Shore and other surrounding neighborhoods that are also feeling financial impacts of the center or from that center being built. And so he, along with the coalition, is asking the city to implement protections for other neighborhoods as well. So Mayor Lori Lightfoot's office did not request further comment by NBC News. And so you can kind of see Chicago here. Um, It is an aerial view of the proposed site for the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago at Jackson Park. And so this is the aerial view right here. And then below it is another still photo. It's a digital rendering, shows the north facing view of Obama's Presidential Center campus in Jackson Park in Chicago right here, which while more affordable housing is always a good thing, the first step is to make sure people who are already have affordable housing don't lose it, Curran said. So a lot of times we're playing a cat and mouse gentrification game. Something happens because a big spike in the rents, people get displaced, and then all of a sudden the city says, oh my God, we should have done something with affordable housing, she said. So time's running out. The longer the city drags its feet in providing affordable housing for more people, then those people will be displaced while gentrification just makes the land more expensive, which means the affordable housing budget will cover fewer units, she said. So if you're going to do these things, you have to do them right away because you lose momentum. And at the same point or a certain point, what happens is that all the activists who fought for um, these things get displaced themselves, even, she said. So they have no one keeping the city accountable for their promises. So while the rent control would be a strong solution to help renters with low income in Illinois, prohibits municipalities from passing rent control ordinances under rent control preemption Act passed in 1997. So what they can do is offer property tax breaks to help landlords who already are providing affordable housing and other subsidies for utilities and bills, she said as well. So Stacy Sutton, a professor of the urban planning and policy at the University of Illinois Chicago, said the issue around the Obama Center is not novel for any city, and it's the same lower income black and brown people that disproportionately they bear the burden when development takes place, largely because class and race are so intertwined. So in 2020 study by Stanford University showed that black residents have more constraints and fewer options of neighborhoods that they can move to compared to their white counterparts, and that minority communities disproportionately feel the negative effects of gentrification. So we think the neighborhoods that we may visit and enjoy, um, we think of those, but there's a full erasure of a history of a lot of those places. Years later, we'll look back and we won't remember who lived there. And that's the erasure, Sutton said. So I think the problem with the large scale development is that there's always some downsides, but you try to mitigate those downsides. So you try to mitigate the adverse effects. And so there's a better way of doing that. And this was not the better way of doing that at all, she said. So Tahiti Hamer is still holding out hope that she'll be able to stay in the neighborhood and that she feels that she's a part of or is a part of her, but she knows that time's running out or running thin for her. So I feel like I'm being forced out, she said. So how can I not afford a home in my own community where I lived for 42 years? So it's unreal and just so unfair. And so a lot of the reasons why people stay put is because rents are high and they can't really afford to move elsewhere. And that is primarily the reason why people stay put. Um, The other reason is that if that's where they work, that's where the children go to school, that's where they reside, that's the place they've known all their life, that's the other reasons outside of that. And why wouldn't you want to stay where you've worked and where your jobs, where there's opportunities for employment? Why would you want to leave that? And so those are the other reasons. But when you have these projects that are being built in the communities and they say one thing, but they're doing the opposite of what they say, it creates a huge problem for the very people that have been there the most and have invested their time and their families and loved ones and friends, neighbors in those communities. And so you say you're for the community, but you're pushing out the community, and that's what's happening. We're seeing it happen in a lot of metropolitan cities. And what I was telling someone earlier today is that I realized that when they built, like here in the Inglewood area of LA County, they had built these stadiums. They're still doing some building. When they built the stadiums before they even started the project, people were excited in the beginning. But then when they realized that the property tax could go up, people started realizing that the rents could go up. We started seeing mass evictions, and then not only mass evictions, displacement. People may not have been evicted, but they just could no longer afford the rent, so they ended up having to move, which displaced them. And now we had the pandemic, which is still going on, and it's still a questionable situation. We have a lot of things that have taken a turn for not so good in what we have seen. We don't really know in the uh, future when it seems where it's unpredictable. We'll just say that. It's sort of like a roller coaster ride, but what we do know, a lot of people have been displaced in every way possible. If it isn't because of gentrification, it's because of the pandemic and all of the things that had happened within that. It's like a huge letdown on the very people who have been here like all their lives, and we have people that somehow they're able to make it out of the situation unscathed financially because they have the economical means to do so. They can sell a house, they can buy a house, move into a new house. They are not displaced. They can move to another place. They can buy property with ease. And, we have a lot of people that are unempathetic to people's circumstance. Everybody doesn't have that kind of financial stability to just be able to move wherever. And so sometimes they are in a situation where they have to stay um, put because that might be the most affordable thing for them to do because it takes money to plan to move elsewhere. And then when you do that, you also got to look at the schools, you got to look at the neighborhood, you got to look at the job opportunities. Is there any there for you? Can you get hired where you move to? Because you can't move and then you don't have employment. And so those are things to consider. And then if you do move, are you going to be able to commute back and forth? Is that going to be an extra added expense? Is it also going to be wear and tear on a car? Um, if that's your means of transportation, and how long are you going to sit on the freeway so you can get back and forth? And I know some people have done that because they feel like it's cheaper to live outside, like in a suburban area, and then come into the cities and work. But then you're paying for it some kind of way, and so normally what people that don't have that kind of money to just uproot themselves, they usually stay put for as long as they can until these situations arise. So like here it says can't stay anymore. Residents near the new Obama Center. You would think of all places a new Obama Center. Fear being pushed out by gentrification. That is so sad because he's the very president that most of those people had elected. And so you would think that they would find a way to try to resolve this issue, but you know, it just seems like nowhere you look, uh, anywhere you look, and there's nowhere you cannot see that this is happening, and it seems like it's everywhere. So there, I guess there are some videos that are on the side that are unrelated to this. They're playing. I tried to actually get rid of it because I wasn't actually on that. I guess it's commercial or whatever. But anyway, it's sad because this is happening, it seems like, in a lot of cities. And so I was talking about some of the things that people may not even realize, that when they build these stadiums, when they build these museums, when they build these huge theaters and everything, it's what may seem well and great in the beginning. And you do want to go and enjoy something really nice. But what you also got to think of is how close do you live to these um, venues, and how is it going to impact your community? Because if you really think about it, that means it changes the whole face of the community with that um, center or that museum being built there. And it's about the money for some people. That's all they look at is money. They don't look at people's lives. Look at how long people have lived there. The people that have been there 42, 30 to 42 years. They don't look at that. They just look at, this is an area, we're going to build here, and then the developers just kind of swoop in. I feel like they're like vultures, money vultures. They see an opportunity and they just swoop down on it, and they just own it. And whoever's in the way, they'll stay there until they get what they want. And unless you can somehow, as a community, fight to keep things the way they are, which is extremely hard. They tried to do that with the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall, and that didn't work out. Actually, they bypassed the activists that were fighting to keep that area and to keep it, it's the same thing. It's happened here in South LA. There were a group of activists. They were fighting to keep the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw where the community would feel more like it was a part of them, but now it was bought by a company. And it's just like money talks. And if you don't have the money, they don't even look at, the people that live in that area. They just look at them. They're like, well, these people in a couple of years, they won't even be there. That's the way they approach the situation. And they're looking at it with dollar signs, literally. And so that's what I've observed when I've looked at all of these articles. Seem very much the same. I don't care if it's New York or if it's Atlanta, if it's South LA, if it's downtown LA. It just seems like all of this. And now you got Chicago. It's like everywhere you turn, it's like this, and it's nonstop. It's like a virus that won't quit. And in terms of the gentrification, it just won't stop. And you have a lot of people. It's like, where are they going to go? What are you going to do with them? It's just like the homeless situation here that we had. It's exploded. Everywhere you look, there's a homeless situation. And they make laws. They didn't know what to do. They spent a lot of money trying to resolve the issues. But how do you resolve? All these different people have different situations. And so it's a case by case situation. So it's a hard thing to try to fix. You can't just fix it overnight. And they came to that conclusion that it wasn't really easy, or it wasn't an easy, it's not about just let's just dole out some money, let's just put the people in hotels, then maybe we can try to lessen some of the homelessness, get some people some services. That doesn't always work for every situation. And so I guess they came to the conclusion that this was a no-win situation, and it's an ongoing problem because you have several different individuals with different issues going on. So you can't just easily fix that. And so now with this seems like it would be simple, but it isn't if you have people that are about the money and all they want to do is buy a property and they just want it for their financial gain. They don't care about the communities. They don't care about the people that are living there. All they want you to do is spend your money and basically make them rich. And that's what it looks like, from what I've seen from this. I don't care which angle you put it. It doesn't seem like it's any different anywhere you go. It's just maybe a different name on the city, but it's the same people doing the same stuff, or the same type of people, rather, doing the same type of stuff. They see an opportunity, like someone was once was saying they're opportunity zones, and when they see this, they jump on it as quick as possible. And if we don't have enough people that have enough push or enough effort to keep these places from being taken over and keeping them affordable, then you're going to see a lot more displacement, or you're going to see a lot more rising rents. And even it affects the houses that are in the close by area. The property tax goes up. Homeowners are affected as well in that sense. And so, here in Los Angeles, to buy a home is ridiculously expensive. And if you get a home that is, you know, a lot less than 500,000, there might be something wrong with it. It may not have that many rooms. Um, you know, Millions of people have come and gone, looked at it, and they realize, wow, they haven't upgraded it since what 1980 something. It's a lot of stuff, and then who knows? Now we got climate change to think about. How's that gonna affect where you live? I'm sure it will. Then you got all them buildings built up around in those areas, and you're thinking, well, maybe this will upgrade the area and bring in a new neighborhood choice of people. But what ends up happening is your taxes are hiked. It can affect you in a whole lot of ways. I saw this story where this couple, they sold their home, and it was crazy because you hear it's a seller's market or buyer's market. And so I guess they heard that it was a seller's market, and so they hurried up and they sold their home. But what they wound up realizing, that when they heard it's a seller's market, that's all it was, a seller's market, not a buyer's market. So when they sold their home and they went to try to see if they could buy another home, they realized they couldn't afford it. And so I saw crazy stories like that. It's like, here you were in your home, you had a house, you were a homeowner, and now it's flipped on you. You can't even buy a home anymore. Probably when they bought their home, the cost of a house wasn't as crazy as it is now. And they realized, even with their savings, they weren't able to buy a home. When they thought about all of the extra added fees and costs and expense, and what the mortgage was and all that, and then it's 30-year and all that. So it just didn't make any sense. So they ended up renting a home. And so I was thinking, wow, that is crazy. That's why you hear stories about a lot of millennials. They're not able to buy homes because of student loan debt, and then it's just so expensive everywhere you look. And when they're building centers like this, like here in Los Angeles, we have the football stadiums. You could literally see, if you come here, you'll see the cranes where they're just constantly building all these high rises, all these places. And the only question in my mind is, okay, so how much is it going to be? How much more is rent going to be? And the closer you live to any of these things, the higher your rent's going to be. And so that's another thing to think about, is that when you live, people are thinking, oh, I'm going to live right by the football stadium, blah, 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 blah. But then when you start realizing, oh, shit, my rent's going to be high as hell. It's going to be high, because even if the place sucks, literally, if the place sucks, it could be like a shithole. Excuse my French. It could be like in a neighborhood that's not that great, but because it's so close in radius to, the football stadium, you could literally less than 2 miles you're away from it. You're gonna pay for it. You're gonna pay for it in your rent. Some kind of way you're gonna pay for it, or your property, your tax is gonna be hiked. It jacked up high and everything, and it's just crazy. It's crazy. And like, it was crazy because there were people, I believe, I'm gonna be under the impression that these were renters, and they were living like right over there when they were building the SoFi Stadium. I kid you not, U-Haul was making a killing. They were there like every week moving somebody out, not in, moving them out because the people's rent went up that much higher. I don't even think they had rent control. I don't know if they had rent control in Inglewood. Whatever was going on by that stadium, SoFi Stadium, those people could no longer stay there and afford it. And you could see how they were just moving. Like each week there was U-Hauls there, left and right. So anyway, it's sad to see this, but it's not a shocker. And it just seems like it's full throttle. And the people who get hurt the most tend to be people that are in a low income, or they don't make, like really high salaries. And it's unfortunate. And these are people who are like long time residents. Like maybe they been there, they grew up, they went to school, high school, things like that. It's sad. Um, because then you gotta rethink your whole life, start all over again. And this is what we're seeing. And the people who are hit the most, it always tends to be the same people. It's the people who either they can't really afford to just be moving everywhere, or it's usually the people that are most marginalized that are always impacted by these type of decisions. It's like the voiceless. You want to speak out and you want to say something. You want to hold a meeting. You want to try to see if you can fight to keep these places to where they're reasonably affordable. But when you have all these people behind the scenes making these deals and these propositions, and they financially worked out a plan how to buy property up right overnight before people's eyes are even open, I mean, it makes you feel powerless because it's like all they see is dollar signs, and that's what things are coming to. And so, having said that, yeah, it's something to think about. Sad, but true.